Our nation is grateful to all the men and women of our armed forces who are standing guard on the front lines of freedom. A dad whose wife is deployed in Iraq recently wrote about what he's learning as he struggles to rear his 3 children alone. "I've ruined at least 3 loads of laundry," he said. "Once you turn everything pink, it stays pink." He goes on, "I've learned what our soldiers' wives have known for generations: hope and grief and perseverance." This time of war has been a time of great hardship for our military families. The President and I want all of our men and women in uniform and their wives and husbands, mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, to know that we appreciate their sacrifice. And we know that it will mean a more peaceful future for our children and grandchildren. No American president ever wants to go to war. Abraham Lincoln didn't want to go to war, but he knew saving the Union required it. Franklin Roosevelt didn't want to go to war, but he knew defeating tyranny demanded it. And my husband didn't want to go to war, but he knew the safety and security of America and the world depended on it. I remember some very quiet nights at the dinner table. George was weighing grim scenarios and ominous intelligence about potentially even more devastating attacks. I listened many nights as George talked with foreign leaders on the phone or in our living room or at our ranch in Crawford. I remember an intense weekend at Camp David. George and Prime Minister Tony Blair were discussing the threat from Saddam Hussein. And I remember sitting in the window of the White House, watching as my husband walked on the lawn below. I knew he was wrestling with these agonizing decisions that would have such profound consequence for so many lives and for the future of our world. And I was there when my husband had to decide. Once again, as in our parents' generation, America had to make the tough choices, the hard decisions, and lead the world toward greater security and freedom. I wasn't born when my father went to World War II. Like so many of our greatest generation, he's now gone, lost to Alzheimer's 9 years ago. He served in the United States Army in Europe for almost 3 years and helped liberate Nordhausen, one of the concentration camps. You can imagine his horror at what he found there. The methods of the terrorists we face today are different, but my father would know this struggle. Our parents' generation confronted tyranny and liberated millions. As we do the hard work of confronting today's threat, we can also be proud that 50 million more men, women, and children live in freedom thanks to the United States of America and our allies. After years of being treated as virtual prisoners in their homes by the Taliban, the women of Afghanistan are going back to work, After being denied an education, even the chance to learn to read, the little girls in Afghanistan are now in school. Almost every eligible voter, over 10 million Afghan citizens, have registered to vote in this fall's presidential election, more than 40% of them women. And wasn't it wonderful to watch the Olympics and see that beautiful Afghan sprinter race in long pants and a t-shirt, exercising her new freedom while respecting the traditions of her country. I recently met a young Iraqi woman. She's one of the new Iraqi Fulbright scholars studying in the United States. She survived horrific horrors, including the gassing of her village by Saddam Hussein. She told me that when people look at Iraq, what they don't see is that Iraq is a country of 25 million people, each with their own hope. As we watch the people of Iraq and Afghanistan take the first steps to build free countries, I'm reminded of what Václav Havel once told me. Václav Havel, playwright, intellectual, freedom fighter, political prisoner, then president of the Czech Republic, said to me, "Laura, you know, democracy is hard. It requires the participation of everybody." I think how long it took us in our country, even though we were given such a perfect document by our founders. It took almost 100 years after the founders declared that all men are created equal to abolish slavery. And not until 84 years ago this month did American women get the right to vote. Our nation has not always lived up to its ideals, yet those ideals have never ceased to guide us. They expose our flaws, and they lead us to mend them. We are the beneficiaries of the works of generations before us, and it's each generation's responsibility to continue that work. These last 3 years since September 11th have been difficult years in our country's history. Years that have demanded the hope, grief, and perseverance that our soldier's husband wrote about. We've learned some lessons we didn't want to know, that our country is more vulnerable than we thought, that some people hate us because we stand for liberty, religious freedom, and tolerance. But we've also been heartened to discover that we're also braver than we thought, stronger and more generous.